Have you ever felt as though your cat was quietly studying you? Not watching for food, not waiting for a treat, not asking for attention, just observing. A glance from across the room, pause in a doorway, a pair of eyes that seem to follow your movements without making it obvious. Most people think they are the ones trying to understand their cats. They study body language, search for behavioral explanations, and wonder what their pets might be feeling. But what if the process is happening in both directions? What if your cat is trying to understand you too? And what makes this fascinating is that cats do not build trust the way many social animals do. They rarely rush into relationships. They do not immediately assume that every human deserves access to their personal space. Instead, they gather information. They observe patterns. They watch for consistency. Over time, they begin forming conclusions. Who feels safe? Who feels predictable? Who respects boundaries? Who creates calm rather than tension? Test 1. The boundary test. One of the first things many cats seem to evaluate is whether you respect their boundaries. This test often begins in subtle ways. A cat enters the room and sits nearby, but not too close. A cat approaches your chair, then pauses. A cat jumps onto the couch but deliberately chooses a space just beyond your reach. To many humans, these moments can feel like invitations. Naturally, people reach out. They try to pet the cat. They attempt to pull the cat closer. They interpret proximity as permission. But from the cat's perspective, proximity and permission are not necessarily the same thing. The cat may simply be collecting information. What happens if I sit here? What happens if I move closer? Will this person allow me to decide how the interaction develops? Or will they immediately take control? Cats place enormous value on choice. In many ways, choice is deeply connected to their sense of safety. An animal that feels trapped often feels vulnerable. An animal that feels free to leave often feels secure. This is why some cats appear unusually drawn to people who do not actively pursue them. Those individuals are often communicating something important without realizing it. They are demonstrating respect. The cat learns that being near them does not automatically result in pressure. Nothing is forced. Nothing is demanded. The relationship remains voluntary. And over time, that creates a powerful foundation for trust. A favorite human is often someone who consistently allows the cat to decide when affection begins and when it ends. Because from a cat's perspective, respect may be one of the clearest signs of safety. Test 2. The reaction test. Once a cat has gathered information about your boundaries, another test often emerges. The reaction test. Cats are remarkably observant when it comes to emotional responses. Far more observant than many people realize. Imagine your cat knocks a pen off the table, then a piece of paper, then perhaps a small object that creates a surprisingly loud noise. Many owners immediately assume the cat is simply being mischievous. And sometimes that may be true. But cats are also gathering information. They are learning how humans respond to unexpected events. Do you become angry? Do you shout? Do your emotions suddenly become unpredictable? Or do you remain calm? For animals, predictability is often closely connected to safety. A person who behaves consistently is easier to understand. And a person who is easier to understand is often easier to trust. Cats spend their lives monitoring their environment for changes. They notice shifts in sound, movement, routine, and emotional atmosphere. Because of this, they become surprisingly skilled at identifying humans whose behavior remains stable under pressure. The interesting thing is that cats do not necessarily require perfection. They do not expect humans to be emotionless. What they seem to value is consistency. If your reactions generally make sense, the cat can adapt. If your reactions change dramatically from one moment to the next, uncertainty begins to grow. And uncertainty often creates distance. Over time, many cats appear to gravitate toward people whose emotional patterns are easiest to predict. Not because those people are exciting, but because they are understandable. And for a cautious animal, understanding can feel incredibly comforting. The hidden power of consistency. This may explain one of the most common mysteries in multi-person households. Why does the cat choose one specific person? Everyone feeds the cat. Everyone provides care. Everyone lives under the same roof. Yet somehow the cat develops a clear preference. The answer may not lie in what people do. It may lie in how consistently they do it. Cats often seem drawn toward individuals whose behavior follows familiar patterns. People who move predictably. People whose voices sound familiar. People whose energy remains relatively stable from day to day. Consistency reduces uncertainty, and reduced uncertainty creates emotional comfort. When viewed through this lens, becoming a favorite human is often less about effort and more about reliability. The cat learns that life feels easier when this particular person is nearby, and that feeling becomes increasingly valuable over time. Test 3. The vulnerability test. Perhaps one of the most meaningful tests involves vulnerability. Trust becomes visible whenever a cat allows itself to be less defensive. Think about the moments when your cat sleeps deeply nearby, not lightly dozing, not resting with one eye partially open, but genuinely sleeping, the body relaxed, the muscles loose, the breathing slow. To humans, this may appear ordinary. To a cat, it is not. Sleep is one of the most vulnerable states an animal can experience. Awareness decreases, reaction times slow, the ability to respond quickly disappears. Choosing to sleep near someone therefore communicates something important. The cat believes the environment is safe enough to lower its defenses. The same principle applies when cats close their eyes around trusted people, or turn their backs toward them, or expose parts of their bodies that would normally remain protected. These behaviors may seem small, but they often represent significant emotional decisions. In essence, the cat is asking a quiet question. What happens when I stop guarding myself? If the answer remains positive, trust deepens. The fascinating part is that these moments rarely happen all at once. Trust usually accumulates gradually. One safe interaction, then another, until eventually the cat no longer feels the need to remain constantly alert. And that transformation can be one of the clearest signs that a deep bond has formed. Test 4. The absence test. Some of the most revealing tests occur when you are not present. Cats are often portrayed as independent creatures that barely notice human routines. Yet research and owner observations repeatedly suggest something different. Cats pay far more attention than they receive credit for. They notice schedules. They notice habits. They notice who enters and leaves the home. And perhaps most importantly, they notice who matters. A cat that has formed a strong attachment may begin responding to your absence in subtle ways. Perhaps it spends time near the front door. Perhaps it visits your favorite chair. Perhaps it sleeps in locations associated with your scent. Perhaps it becomes noticeably more active shortly before your usual return time. These behaviors do not necessarily indicate anxiety. Instead, they may reflect recognition. The cat has learned that your presence influences its environment. And when that presence disappears, the change becomes noticeable. Test 5. The Real You test. Perhaps the most fascinating test of all involves authenticity. Cats appear remarkably sensitive to behavioral sincerity. They observe body language constantly. They notice tension. They notice hesitation. They notice when behavior feels natural and when it feels forced. Many humans unintentionally perform around cats. They use exaggerated voices. They try too hard to gain affection. They constantly seek validation from the animal. Yet some cats seem strangely uninterested in these efforts. Instead, they become attached to people who simply behave like themselves. Final grade. So what are the 5 tests cats often give their favorite humans? The boundary test, the reaction test, the vulnerability test, the absence test, and the real you test. Of course, cats are not consciously grading people. They are not assigning scores. They are not keeping records. But they are constantly gathering information, watching, learning, comparing experiences, building expectations, and every interaction teaches them something about who you are. The beautiful part is that becoming a cat's favorite human rarely depends on grand gestures. It rarely depends on expensive toys. It rarely depends on endless treats. More often, it depends on something much quieter: patience and respect.